My younger sister and I were both senior maids in Consort Ruan's quarters, in our past life. When Consort Ruan was demoted, she was allowed to take only one personal maid with her to the cold palace. She asked my sister and me to choose. One would accompany her to the cold palace, while the other would follow Consort Juan, with whom she had once been on good terms, in my past life. My younger sister chose to follow Consort Juan. But little did she know that Consort Juan was reckless. She offended the other consorts in the harem, and was framed and killed. Consort Ruan, however, was eventually reinstated. Not only did she leave the cold palace, but she also rose to become empress. My younger sister envied my good fortune. She came to me in tears to vent her grievances, but then turned around and pushed me into a deep W.L. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn to the moment just before Consort Juan was to be sent to the cold palace. This time, my younger sister knelt on the ground, clutching Consort Ruan's thigh. "Your Highness, this servant is willing to follow you to the cold palace." Consort Ruan was pleased with her loyalty and turned to ask me, "And what about you? Are you willing to serve Consort Juan?" I lowered my gaze to hide my delight and answered without hesitation, "This servant is willing." Main text. Consort Juan frowned. She had expected me to compete with my younger sister to accompany her to the cold palace. Facing her displeased and puzzled stare, I dug my fingertips into the palm of my hand and remained silent. Steeled against her disapproval, Consort Juan stepped past me to help my younger sister to her feet. "You're so young, how could you possibly attend to your mistress on your own? Why not come with me and let your elder sister go to the cold palace to serve her?" I stood there numbly, a pang of bitterness and uncertainty rising in my heart. In truth, my younger sister and I are only a year apart in age. She has a lively disposition and a sweet tongue. Not only has she always been more favored by Consort Juan than I, but even Consort Juan treats her with special regard. Faced with Consort Juan's kind offer, my younger sister looked resolute. "This servant cannot bear to part with my mistress. If my mistress must suffer in the cold palace, I truly cannot bear to save myself alone." Hearing this, she earned even more admiration and sympathy from everyone present. Consort Ruan's usually cold expression softened. "You are a good girl. I have not spoiled you in vain. And you have nothing to say." She turned to me, the smile fading from her face. Did she really expect me to speak? In my previous life, when I said I would follow her into the cold palace, she accused me of lacking sincerity, claiming my words were insincere, hypocritical, and affected. This time I replied, "This servant will abide by the arrangements of the two empresses. You." Just as Consort Ruan's face was filled with disappointment and heartache, a eunuch standing nearby glanced at the sky and called out, "The hour has come. Consort Ruan, please." Consort Ruan had no choice but to set off with my younger sister. The moment she turned to enter the cold palace, my sister glanced back at me with a smug smile, as if wealth and glory were right before her eyes. Little did she know, E2 breathed a sigh of relief, for I knew better than anyone just how terrifying life in the cold palace was. In this palace, no one treated those in the cold palace as human beings. Winter was the hardest to endure. No charcoal fires, no cotton clothes. Every year, women who froze to death were wrapped in straw mats and thrown out. In my previous life, I was utterly loyal to Consort Juan, fearing she would suffer from the cold. I suppressed my revulsion and submit myself to an old eunuch in exchange for a little charcoal. Yet Consort Juan herself still saw herself as that high and mighty consort, never lifting a finger to do any work. She frowned and pursed her lips. "Yushu, I'm so cold. Can't you ask for a little more charcoal?" She shook her head and sighed. "Yushu, You're supposed to be my dog. Yet you bring me only these scraps. When have I ever suffered such humiliation? It's all your fault. Cold, hungry, and in pain. I shivered as I pleaded with her. Your Highness. Might I sit by the brazier for a moment? She looked at me with utter disgust. You've done such things with that old eunuch. Your body is filthy. You'd best not enter my chambers. When Consort Juan left the cold palace, she was still radiant and elegant, whereas I was already rotten to the core. On the way back with Consort Juan, my steps felt a little lighter. Consort Juan glanced at me with a dismissive look. Yuzu is it? Since you insist on following me, you'll take on the duty of keeping watch and tending the fire in the Changle Palace from now on. My body stiffened, unlike my younger sister in my previous life, who followed Consort Juan and still performed the light duties of a first-class palace maid. This time, Consort Juan was humiliating me by assigning me the tasks of a third-class palace maid. And that wasn't all. Consort Juan then scolded me in front of everyone. Remember, the Changle Palace is not like the Chishi Pavilion. Stop playing those underhanded tricks you used to pull. To say I didn't feel wronged and humiliated would be a lie. But I held back and didn't defend myself, because defending myself would be pointless. The palace maids around Lady Juan all looked at me with contempt. Kneel and thank her. Among them were some who had once been friendly to me, calling me Sister Yusa, but flattery and backstabbing are human nature. I knelt respectfully and bowed my head. Thank you, Lady Juan. Seeing my quiet compliance, Consort Juan lost interest in further scolding me. She gave a cold snort and continued on her way. I followed her into the Changle Hall, gazing upon the banners of Xianglin. Hearing the bells and drums of Changle, the Changle Hall was even more magnificent and imposing than the Chishi Pavilion where Consort Juan had once resided. Inside, there were many palace attendants coming and going. Yet everything proceeded in perfect order. The main seat in the Hall of Everlasting Joy belonged to the current imperial consort, while Consort Yuan resided in a side chamber. I had barely arrived here and had not even had a moment to look forward to the future when, whether at Consort Juan's behest or Nodi, was already being ostracized by the people in the side chamber. That night, I was assigned to keep watch. But when the hour came, Annie came to relieve me, having been sent into the depths of the palace at a young age. I was well aware of the palace's rules and the underhanded tactics that went on behind the scenes. Knowing I couldn't afford to make a single misstep at this moment and that I must not leave any evidence behind, I gritted my teeth and continued my watch. Dawn broke, and I could finally return to my quarters, only to discover that the meal meant for me had been tossed into the slop bucket. In my past life, I had eaten my fair share of stale and leftover food in the cold palace. In this life, I still managed to fish out a soiled steamed bun and shove it into my mouth. I silently tidied up and went to rest, only to be forcibly woken again. You cowardly wretch, you have the nerve to sleep. Get to the kitchen and stoke the fire and wash the vegetables. Spit, you traitor. For several days in a row, they deliberately kept me from sleeping. The physical exhaustion did not break me, compared to my time in the cold palace. This hardship was nothing. They'd better not let me catch even the slightest glimmer of hope, not even a sliver. I gazed silently at the sky. I was gritting my teeth and enduring it. But my body was gradually reaching its limit. While tending the fire in the small kitchen, I accidentally dozed off and was caught by the matron in charge. I resigned myself to being punished, perhaps forced to kneel, or even slapped across the face. But to my surprise, the matron merely gave me a stern lecture and did not resort to harsh punishment. What's that look on your face? Do you think an old woman like me would beat you over such a trifling matter? We have our own rules here in the Changle Palace. I was stunned. In that moment, it felt as though I had survived a catastrophe. Living in the darkness, as long as others did not mistreat me. I was already filled with gratitude. I didn't say a word. But I worked even harder to repay this rare kindness. Every time I entered the kitchen, I would volunteer to take on extra tasks to lighten the matron's load. The matron was cold on the outside but warm-hearted. She saw this, though she didn't call me out on it. Instead, her expression toward me grew increasingly gentle. One day, when I returned from my shift and was about to fetch the slop bucket, she brought out a bowl of warm food she had saved for me. Later, whenever I was utterly exhausted, she would wave me off and tell me to go to the back end, take a nap, and so life became a little easier to bear. No longer quite so unbearable. I am deeply grateful to this matron, though I may be slow-witted. I remember every kindness shown to me and look for opportunities to repay it. After receiving my meager allowance, I traded it for scraps of fresh ingredients. In the small kitchen, I made a plate of my own creation, a 7 treasure pastry for the matron. The matron ate them with great praise, and we began to chat. Gradually, I found my first cross-generational friend in 2 lifetimes. Later, I found opportunities to make stuffed eat milk cakes and tripe soup. The matron was utterly amazed. In the main hall of the Changle Palace, Consort Huan was both surprised and flattered. She never expected the usually haughty and domineering imperial consort to invite her for tea. It is a rare honor that Her Imperial Highness, the imperial consort, is pleased. It is a blessing for this humble servant. I wonder, however, which of the palace maids in my service has been so fortunate as to earn Her Imperial Highness's favor. If she could make the imperial consort look good in front of her, she would surely be richly rewarded upon her return. The imperial consort glanced at the matron standing beside her, who stepped forward to report. It is Miss Yuju. She is an excellent cook. Many were unaware that this unassuming matron in the kitchen was actually one of the imperial consort's closest confidants. Brought with her from her ly home years ago, the imperial consort spoke lazily. I've only just learned she serves in your quarters. You've kept her well hidden. Upon hearing my name, Consort Huan's eyes flickered with confusion for a moment, followed by surprise and disbelief. I was summoned forward and curtsied before Her Imperial Highness. A palace maid at the consort's side approached and placed a bag of silver in my hand, saying it was the consort's reward. Though the imperial consort was ruthless and tyrannical, having even gone so far as to order the execution of other consorts, was never stingy when it came to rewarding her servants. Consort Huan regained her composure, her expression complex, and muttered under her breath, "To think you possessed such skill. I've truly underestimated you." In her eyes, I was always ordinary, someone who only managed to serve as a personal attendant to Consort Huan by riding on my younger sister's coattails. Little did she know that back at Shioshi Pavilion, I had risen to the rank of first-class senior palace maiden for a reason. It wasn't just an empty title. Knowing I was plain-looking and not the sharpest with words, I honed my culinary skills and learned to read and manage accounts. Now, not only have I received a reward, but the imperial consort has even bestowed a gem-encrusted hairpin adorned with a climbing crabapple design upon Lady Huan's household. The 2 consorts from the other side chambers could not hide their envy. Sister is truly blessed. Even her servants know how to make a name for themselves. This Miss Yuju looks like a down-to-earth, capable young woman. Why haven't we seen her around before? Consort Huan glanced at me and cleared her throat awkwardly. She was entrusted to me by Sister Huan. She's only been here a few days, and I hadn't had a chance to make proper arrangements yet. So I sent her to help in the kitchen. As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately looked to see the imperial consort's reaction. Fortunately, The imperial consort merely gave her a fleeting glance and did not reprimand her on the spot for daring to mention a consort from the cold palace. The two other consorts were no fools. They immediately chimed in. "Oh my little sister. You're truly so loyal and compassionate. Receiving such flattery." Consort Huan's smile grew even more smug. Consort Huan wasn't particularly clever. On the contrary, she was rash and prone to offending people. "You two sisters are right. One simply cannot be too selfish in this life." The two consorts had, however, avoided Consort Huan the moment they heard of her misfortune. Now that Consort Huan had called them out, they couldn't help but grit their teeth in silence. Back in the side hall, in Fran, tea of all the palace maids, Consort Huan saved face by bestowing some rewards upon me. As she concluded, she added, "You needn't keep night watch anymore. Just do your work diligently in the kitchen. Your rank is set at second class." Yes, having been reassigned, I clutched my new maidservant's uniform and strode back along the path, braving the increasingly biting cold wind. Hot tears streamed down my face. Back at the maids' quarters, someone had moved the chamber pot from beside my bed to another spot. A few third-class maids, laughing and chatting as they carried back their coal braziers, fell silent the moment they saw me. I recognized them. They had once joined in the bullying against me. Looking sheepish, they pushed their braziers a little closer to my bed. I gave a faint smile and ignored them. Life seemed to be sprouting new buds like an old tree. And soon I saw my younger sister. After just a few days apart, she had visibly grown much thinner. Shivering in her thin clothes, her once plump, fair face now bore several scratch marks. She looked utterly bedraggled. It turned out she had fought with the other palace maids in the cold palace over food. Not only had she failed to get any, but her face had been scratched to pieces. She hadn't had a proper meal in days. She glared at me with resentment. "How did you manage to get food in your past life?" "By fighting for it," I said. "At first, I did rely on fighting others for food, but I rarely got much. Later, I met a concubine from the previous dynasty there. She managed to get some rice and flour by sharing meals with eunuchs. And she had even stored some Chinese cabbage for the winter. I often went to help her, but she was extremely suspicious. Only after tasting my cooking a few times did she tacitly allow me to go. When she had eaten her fill, she would give me the leftovers, which I took back to share with Consort Huan. Is stealing the only way? You aren't lying to me, are you?" My younger sister slumped in despair. She had always been skilled at flattery and charm, winning her master's favor with her silver tongue. She had no real strength or ability. When it came to physical labor, she was only good for taking a beating. My younger sister clenched her teeth. Her eyes filled with pity. "Sister, can't you help me? I'm your only sister." You know, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. In my past life, I had once been so ravenously hungry that I had no choice but to beg her for help. But what about her? "My dear sister, it was you who insisted on entering the cold palace. Now that you've earned a reputation for loyalty, isn't it only right that you suffer a little? I can't let you have all the benefits. Don't come out anymore. A younger sister's life is a life. Couldn't drag me down with you. Right in front of me." She tossed the uneaten pastries into the slop bucket. She said that if I was truly hungry, I could pick them up and eat them. At that, Mom, and I was utterly shocked and despairing. Now, I pulled a shortbread cookie from my bosom and glanced at the waste bucket beside me. My younger sister's eyes widened, and she shook her head in disbelief. "No, you can't humiliate me like this." It used to be fine for her to humiliate me, but now that the tables have turned, She can't stand it. I snorted coldly, popped the pastry into my mouth, and ate it bite by bite. I'm not as low as she is. I cherish every morsel of food. She collapsed to the ground, sobbing softly. But I won't show her a shred of mercy anymore. I just never expected that Consort Juan would actually agree to see her. In my past life, I too had begged Consort Juan for an audience, unable to bear the old eunuch's torment. Yet she had refused to see me. My younger sister was overjoyed. She threw herself at Consort Juan's feet, her eyes brimming with tears as she poured out her grievances. Consort Juan sighed in sympathy. You have suffered. This servant risked her life to come here. I implore Consort Juan to save our mistress. Well, Consort Juan hesitated. Helping those in the cold palace without permission was a grave offense. I know this puts you in a difficult position, Your Highness. But I've thought of a solution that satisfies everyone. My younger sister shed her earlier meekness, her eyes darting about. She suddenly glanced my way, a malicious smile curving her lips. I knew immediately that this was trouble. Why not let my elder sister take care of it? She can send us some charcoal and food every day. She opened and closed her mouth. Even if we're caught, my elder sister need only say she couldn't bear to see her younger sister suffer. If she pleads for mercy, I'm sure nothing will come of it. Upon hearing this, Consort Juan nodded in agreement. Nothing will come of it. How could she be so shameless as to say that? If we're caught, even if I beat my head against the ground, I won't escape punishment. I clenched my fists so tightly my body felt like it might collapse from the fury. Yushu, don't even think of shirking this. She's your own flesh and blood sister, and Consort Juan is your former mistress. You can't just stand by and watch her die. My sister deliberately walked past me. Well then, I'll be counting on you from now on. That same day, after my sister left, Consort Juan sent someone to urge me to go to the cold palace. Fine. I'll bring you your meal, though I doubt you'll live long enough to eat it. Clutching the bundle tightly, I went to the spot my sister had EED upon. It was a secluded spot, with a dog hole at the base of the wall. She told me to slip the food and clothes through the hole. She would come to retrieve them when the opportunity arose. I assumed this dog hole was also her secret escape route from the cold palace. I dragged over some stones and blocked the opening. Then I returned to the main gate of the cold palace. With a creak, the gate swung open, and two CHS stepped out. I immediately spotted the hunched-over old eunuch in the back. Memories of him as a devil from my past life surged through my mind, causing my body to tremble involuntarily. I forced myself to stay calm and walked forward. The head eunuch in front of me shrieked, "Which palace are you from? Don't you know the cold palace is off limits?" The old eunuch behind him eyed me up and down with his cloudy eyes. A wave of nausea washed over me, but I quickly replied, "I am the older sister of a girl named Yulan inside. I've brought her some food and clothes. I hope you'll be lenient." "Your Excellency." The head eunuch snorted coldly and rubbed his fingers together. The implication was clear. The rules of the cold palace were simple. Without a bribe, trying to deliver anything was nothing but a pipe dream. I pretended not to understand and simply handed over the bundle. The eunuch spat out, "What kind of brainless fool are you?" I replied. Consort Juan saw that I was obedient and nodded in satisfaction. She instructed me to go again tomorrow, saying she felt most sorry for Sister Juan, the consort, who was suffering. I said, "As you command." The next day I went again, but only one person came out, that old eunuch. The old eunuch eyed me up and down. "Are you really Yulan's older sister?" I said yes, though it made me sick to my stomach. He thought for a moment, then smiled in a lecherous and terrifying way. Hand the items over to this old man, while I was working in the kitchen. Consort Huan summoned me, a figure with disheveled hair, looking like a madwoman, lunged at me. My younger sister raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. I dodged her blow. She flailed her arms and screamed, "You slut! You slut!" Huan Pin, seated on the dais, slammed her fist on the table. "You Zhu! Do you know the gravity of your offense?" I knelt down. "This servant does not know. Please, Your Highness, calm your anger." Consort Huan gasped heavily. "You went to the Cold Palace to deliver the items. Why did you give them to that eunuch? Weren't we supposed to have you sneak them through the hole?" I bowed my head. This servant is foolish. The dog hole had been blocked by someone, and the Cold Palace gates were tightly shut, so I couldn't get in. I had no choice but to have the head eunuch deliver them on my behalf. Consort Huan nearly choked on her words. "You fool! You wretch! You knew full well that if you handed it over to those worthless eunuchs, the items would never reach us, and that disgusting old manha." The old eunuch, carrying the bundle, went to find her. He threw her to the ground. When Yulan resisted, he tore her clothes to shreds and slapped her acros s the face several times. She dared not stand up to the old eunuch, so she vented all her anger on me. I watched her in silence, as if she were nothing more than a clown. "Fine, I get it. You did this on purpose. In my previous life, I had been tortured by the old eunuch, and word of this had reached her ears. Her reaction was to shame me, deliberately running to the gates of the Cold Palace to scream that I was a shameless slut. In this life, it's her turn to taste the bitterness of shamelessness." He tried to come over and fight me, but I wasn't going to indulge her anymore. I strode forward in a flash. "If you want people to notice you, go ahead and act like a madwoman. Don't you have a brain? Can't you figure out what will happen if you sneak out of the Cold Palace?" My younger sister, who had never seen me speak so harshly before, froze for a moment. When she met my gaze filled with utter loathing, she instinctively took a step back. Consort Huan also stood there dumbfounded for a moment. When she came to her senses, she frowned in displeasure. "You Zhu, you're acting so high and mighty. Have you forgotten our sisterly bond entirely? Go outside and kneel. Reflect on your actions." My sister snorted coldly, her tone laced with sarcasm as if she'd just let off steam. "Sister, why don't you go already?" Perhaps I should have continued to endure it and obediently gone out to kneel, but facing my sister's smug expression, I stood there stiff as a board, unable to move an inch. I said, "Her Imperial Highness the Consort wishes to eat 7 treasure pastry. This servant dares not delay." "What?" Consort Huan frowned. I repeated myself. Consort Huan seemed furious. She pointed her finger at me. "Fine. Fine, you Zhu. Think you've grown wings? Have you? I truly regret bringing you back. You're nothing but an ungrateful wretch." I used the Imperial Consort as an excuse to avoid punishment, but I knew Consort Huan wouldn't let it go, not wanting to sit idly by and wait for disaster. I explained the situation to the matron. Perhaps I could have more subtly exploited the matron's kindness toward me, but I also knew that honesty was the safest and wisest course of action. Sure enough, after listening, the matron silently studied me for a moment, then sighed and said she would help me find a solution. That very day, a messenger arrived from the main palace. With the new year approaching, Her Imperial Highness He Imperial Consort has ordered an inventory of the storerooms. We've heard that Miss Yushu is skilled in bookkeeping. Why not come serve in the main palace? Consort Huan shot me a fierce glare and clenched her teacup tightly. After a long pause, she clenched her teeth and spoke. The imperial consort's kindness is deeply appreciated by this concubine and the others. But as for that maid, Yu Zhu, she hails from Chishi Pavilion and was once a confidant of the late consort Wan. This concubine cannot make such a decision on her own. Seeing the grim expression on the palace aide from the main hall, Consort Huan added with a smile. Why not go ask His Majesty's opinion first? That won't be necessary. This servant takes her leave. No one had expected Consort Huan to dare refuse the imperial consort. Even she herself, still trembling with fear, patted her chest and asked the attendant by her side. Do you think Her Imperial Highness the imperial consort will be angry? Why? I don't think so. She's just a lowly palace maid not worth the imperial consort's anger. That's good. That's good. I stood there, feeling nothing but bitter irony. Consort Huan looked at me. Don't blame me. Blame yourself. Who told you to be less likable than your younger sister? Suddenly, I couldn't bear to look at Consort Huan's smug face. I turned and walked out. As the year drew to a close, heavy snow began to fall. Early one morning, I spotted a shadowy figure sneaking into Consort Huan's chambers. It was my younger sister again. This time, she was clearly trying to avoid me. Before long, Consort Huan's senior palace maid came to the kitchen to summon me. Yu Zhu, Lady Huan is summoning you. She has a task for you. A sense of foreboding welled up in my heart, and my voice came out hoarse. Please ask her ladyship to wait a moment. I'll be there after I change my clothes. I deliberately slowed my movements. And just then, a palace maid sharing my bed leaned close to my ear. Don't go. They're trying to harm you. It turned out that life in the cold palace had grown even more unbearable. My younger sister had devised a way to get some charcoal by having me take her place in attending to the old eunuch. Your sister says you two look alike. And since the old eunuch has poor eyesight, he won't notice a thing in the dark. Consort Huan agreed. She said she'd reward you once this is done. She'll make you a senior palace maid. And she'll even ask His Majesty to grant you and the old eunuch a shared meal. I knew they had ulterior motives. But hearing the palace maid's words still made my whole body tremble and my stomach churn. I jumped to my feet and nearly threw up. Just then, footsteps approached. Someone outside urged, "Are you ready yet?" At this point, I had no choice but to take a chance. I rushed out, shoved the palace maid aside, and sprinted toward Chushio Palace. I remembered the matron saying that new court ladies had been admitted to Chushio Palace today, and that the imperial consort was there to address them. I raced toward Chushio Palace, even though I knew that in the future, the imperial consort would be dragged down by her father and brother, stripped of her title, and ultimately die by throwing herself against a pillar in despair. I had to seize this one last chance for survival. At the gates of Chushio Palace, the imperial consort was in full fury. Her words alone enough to crush a newly arrived court lady who had no sense of her place. The court lady's wails left everyone speechless with fear. The imperial consort's gaze swept over me, and I shuddered. She snorted derisively, saying impatient, "Why aren't you staying put in Changle Hall? What are you doing in this filthy place?" Though her words were clearly a rebuke, I suddenly felt no longer afraid. I walked up to her, knelt down, and bowed my head deeply. "I beg your highness for mercy." She said nothing, fiddling with her jewel-encrusted armor. Finally she snorted, raised her hand, and was helped onto her palanquin. The matron pulled me up, her voice brimming with delight. "Hurry up and follow." I became a palace maid in the main hall. In the mornings, I accompanied them to the storeroom to take inventory of the silver and rewards. In the afternoons, I made pastries with the matron. This time, no one informed Consort Huan. Consort Huan hesitated to speak several times. But in the end, intimidated by the imperial consort's majesty, she didn't utter a single word. Now that I was a palace maid in the main hall, I started making more friends. Someone brought me news of my younger sister in the cold palace. She had become the old eunuch's plaything. Every night, inhuman sounds could be heard coming from the cold palace. There was also news about Consort Huan. I heard that my sister received food from the old eunuch but never brought any back to her mistress. She even kept the charcoal brazier by her own bed. At first, Consort Huan put on airs, merely hinting that my younger sister was betraying her mistress and defying authority. Later, driven to desperation by hunger, she actually began fighting others for food. As a result, she was shoved to the ground and broke her leg. She begged the cold palace steward to let her see His Majesty, claiming that if His Majesty saw her in such a state, he would surely take pity on her and release her. The steward actually believed her, but was harshly reprimanded by His Majesty. Upon returning, the steward slapped Consort Huan twice across the face. Cold and starving, Consort Huan curled up on the hard bed frame, and for some reason, suddenly thought of me again. She sent a message to me, saying she missed me and wanted me to come see her. My younger sister snuck out again and snapped at me fiercely. "You're not allowed to go. Don't bother with that woman," she raged, calling Consort Huan inhuman. It was that woman, Consort Huan, who personally sent me to the old eunuch's bed. She's kind-faced but cruel-hearted, all pretense and false virtue. I hate her with a passion. Of course, I wouldn't go see Consort Huan. I had already seen through Consort Huan's true nature in my past life. On the surface, she appears pure and flawless, constantly speaking of kindness and compassion. Yet in reality, she is the most selfish and heartless of all. My younger sister pleaded desperately. "Sister, please help me. I'd rather die than go back to the cold palace. In my past life, I was blinded by madness. I shouldn't have harmed you. I regret it, I truly do. Please help me." I looked down at her. "If you were in my shoes, would you forgive the person who killed you? Sister, how can you be so heartless? Have you completely forgotten our sisterly bond?" She cried out behind me. My figure vanished resolutely at the end of the path, but she was like a stubborn leech failing to beg me. She incited Consort Huan to block my way, in front of Consort Huan. However, my younger sister made no mention of her falling out with Consort Huan. She kept calling me milady at every turn, still maintaining her image as a loyal servant. "Yu Zhu, it was I who brought you into the Chang'e Palace in the first place. You must acknowledge that favor, don't you?" Consort Huan struck first, taking the initiative. I sighed helplessly. "Consort Huan, Yu Zhu dares not forget your kindness." Consort Huan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. "That's good. Since that's the case, help Consort Huan and your younger sister consider it a way to repay my kindness." Seeing that I remained silent, she lowered her voice. "Go and plead with the imperial consort, as long as she intercedes with His Majesty. Why would Consort Huan not be released from the cold palace?" I was stunned and at a loss for words. "Consort Huan, you jest." Consort Huan was banished to the cold palace for offending His Majesty. How could a mere plea from an outsider secure her pardon? Consort Huan coughed a few times and fell silent. "Sister, you can definitely do this. I've heard the imperial consort favors you greatly and has even put you in charge of the storeroom." My younger sister's eyes darted about. "Even if we don't ask the imperial consort for help, just bring a few of her personal items out of the storeroom, Once the people in the cold palace see the imperial consort's belongings, they naturally won't dare to bully me anymore, Consort Juan. For that matter. That's actually not a bad idea. Consort Juan's eyes lit up. Yushu. You're not as clever as your younger sister. As the two of them bantered back and forth, I was so exasperated by the end that I burst out laughing. Are you two dreaming? I was so furious I forgot my station and blurted out the insult. How dare you? Consort Juan had never been berated in such a manner by a lowly palace maid. Yushu has disrespected her superior. Strike her across the face. I'll see who dares. A cold, haughty voice rang out from outside, supported by attendants. The imperial consort strode in. She stepped forward and smack. A slap landed squarely on Consort Juan's face. Did someone just say they were going to steal this consort's belongings? The imperial consort asked with a smile. Your Imperial Highness. Spare my life. Juan Pin trembled all over, and the room was instantly filled with people kneeling on the floor. The imperial consort walked to her sister, who was slumped on the ground, and lifted her chin with the tip of her foot. She gave her a glance. You scheming vixen. You've taken after your pretendee. Us, mistress. Her expression turned fierce. Strike this wretch across the face for me. Don't kill her, beat her half to death and send her back. If this wretch dares to step a single step outside the cold palace again, sever her Achilles tendons. The imperial consort pointed at Consort Juan again. You've been associating with the wretch in the cold palace time and again are you trying to drag this palace down with you? Get out. You're beyond redemption and defile the feng shui of my Changle Hall. She turned to me and snorted coldly. Useless thing. You're only coming to tell me now that you've been pushed to this point. Are you mute? Your allowance is cut for half a year. I curved my lips slightly and knelt to express my gratitude. The matron whispered in my ear. Don't worry. The imperial consort always gives a grand reward at the end of the year. That little allowance is nothing. Consort Juan was dragged out of the Changle Palace with her bedding, her face blank with bewilderment, as if she had lost her parents. My younger sister was beaten until her face was covered in blood, her howls heart-wrenching. The imperial consort ordered me to watch the punishment from the sidelines, saying it would toughen my cowardly heart. Before my younger sister passed out, she glared at me with hatred. Don't rejoice for too long. The imperial consort won't last long, no one can stop it. She spat out the teeth that had been knocked from her mouth. Her eyes clouded with madness. Of course. I knew exactly what she was talking about, but after I sought refuge with the imperial consort, I told her everything I knew from my past life. I told the imperial consort that her father, A.N.D. brother the Duke of Zhen and the Grand General of Fuenwold be falsely accused of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country, and the one framing them was none other than the general's own deputy commander. This deputy commander was nominally Consort Ruan's adoptive brother, but in reality, he was her lover. He wanted to secure a better future for Consort Ruan, who was languishing in the cold palace. When the imperial consort heard my words, she was skeptical at first, but she still had her brother investigate that deputy commander. The results of the investigation proved that everything I had said was true. Thanks to my words, the Duke of Zhen's household was spared a great calamity. Not long after, the Grand General of Fuyuan achieved a great victory over the Tartars and returned triumphantly to the capital. At the same time, the Lieutenant General was brought back in chains, along with the love letters he had exchanged with Consort Juan. After reading them, His Majesty was furious not only because the Lieutenant General had framed a loyal subject, but crucially, because Consort Juan had dared to cuckold him. Meanwhile, Consort Juan had a dream last night in which His Majesty personally escorted her out of the cold palace and even crowned her empress. She was overjoyed. But before she could savor the moment, She was thrown into prison, over at the Changal Palace. The imperial consort suddenly curts, "IED" to me. And I quickly stepped aside. "Don't move," she said solemnly. "I must thank you. You saved the lives of my entire family." She took my hand. The look in her eyes was no longer that of a servant, but of an equal friend. Her eyes slowly reddened, and my own nose began to tingle with emotion. "If your highness trusts me, please hear one more word from me," I said. Excessive merit overshadows the sovereign. She trembled all over. And slumped into her chair. After a long silence, she rose and ordered a letter to be sent to the Duke of Jin's residence. In truth, she didn't need me to spell it out. She was no fool. She had clearly sensed His Majesty's intent to exterminate her family. Now, only by withdrawing at the height of her power could she preserve the lives of her entire family. The imperial consort was the apple of her father and brother's eyes, and this incident had left them deeply shaken. Father and son immediately took action. One returned his imperial token, while the other requested retirement. His Majesty feigned reluctance several times, but seeing that the two were resolute, he gladly accepted their requests. Soon after, an imperial edict arrived from the Changal Palace. The imperial consort was elevated to imperial noble consort, a rank equivalent to that of a deputy empress. Joy filled the Changal Palace, but the matron suddenly grew pensive. "Now that the empress's throne is vacant, if your highness were to bear a prince, who knows that position might." A prince. My heart twisted in pain as I looked at the imperial consort. In truth, I harbored a secret. It was something Consort Ruan had casually revealed in my previous life. The imperial consort had long ago been given a potion to prevent conception and would likely never have children of her own. Perhaps sensing my gaze, the imperial consort scoffed, as if she had seen through and let go of everything. "I have no desire to be empress, and as long as I am here, there will never be another empress. In this life, she no longer clings to her love for the emperor. She remains as haughty and domineering as ever." How wonderful! Consort Ruan was sentenced to demotion to commoner status and exiled to Ninguda as her loyal servant. My younger sister was naturally exiled alongside her. On the day of their exile, Her Imperial Highness the Imperial Consort specially permitted me to leave the palace to see them off, but warned me that if I dared to show mercy or shed a tear, she would make me pay dearly. No, it shouldn't be like this. My younger sister still couldn't accept reality. I should have been living in the cunning palace, fawned over by all the palace maids and eunuchs, while you should have been implicated and executed. How did it come to this? My sister, acting like a madwoman, tried to break away from the exile procession to grab hold of me. Crack! A whip lashed against her body. "Behave yourself." My sister let out a scream of pain, yet remained defiant. "Do it again. Go to hell. Go to hell." She reached out toward me through the air, clenching her fingers fiercely as if gripping my neck. Compared to her madness, Consort Ruan was much calmer. "Yushu, have you come to see me off? It seems I did not place my trust in you in vain," she said, furrowing her brow slightly. "My feet hurt so much. Could you please let me wear your shoes? Also, since you've come to see me off, why didn't you bring a bundle with you some clothes and food? I recall your cooking skills are quite good." "Never mind. You've always been too slow-witted to think of such things. I won't hold it against you. Hand over all the silver you have on you." I didn't move, so she urged me again. "The silver is too heavy. I didn't bring it with me. There are 2 500-tael silver notes in the silk pouch. Would your highness like them?" Consort Ruan's face lit up. She snatched the pouch and tucked it into her bosom. She tried to take my shoes as well. But I paid her no further attention, watching the exile procession fade into the distance. I turned and headed back to the palace. At the entrance to the Changle Hall, I encountered another familiar face. Consort Huan was kneeling there, pleading for an audience with the imperial consort. She claimed she had been falsely accused and could not clear her name. Only the imperial consort could protect her. Consort Bai's child was truly not caused by my premature birth. I swear on my life, please. Imperial consort, save me. No one paid her any mind. When she saw me, a glimmer of hope lit up in her eyes. Miss Yuju, I know you're a good person. Please help me. Will you take me inside to see the imperial consort? Though she was simple-minded, she knew the imperial consort was fiercely protective of her own. If she could shield her as she had before, she was certain she could turn this crisis into safety once again. I pulled away the hem of my robe she was clutching, bowed slightly to her, and walked her into the gate. I had nothing more to say to her. In the end, Consort Huan was sentenced to death by caning for plotting to harm Consort Bai, causing her to bleed to death after giving birth. As for the child Consort Bai had born, His Majesty brought him to the Changle Palace. From Hen on, the Changle Palace had a new young master. As for me, I was gradually promoted back to the position of senior palace maidservant. I was of ordinary appearance. The imperial consort rarely allowed me to attend her, and His Majesty preferred beauties. I was assigned to manage the storerooms, and in my spare time, I would hole up in the kitchen with the matron to experiment with new recipes. The young master, however, did enjoy being held by me. A year passed quickly. One day, a letter addressed to me arrived from outside the palace. Though called a letter, it was actually a filthy, tattered strip of cloth. You could tell the writer was desperate. The message asked where the 1,000-tael silver note was. Why were there only 2 pieces of yellow paper in the silk pouch? I burst out laughing, and the young eunuch who delivered it scratched his head. I wouldn't dare hide the truth from you, Miss Yuju. This letter came from the north. It was sent here half a year ago, and now we don't even know if the writer is alive or dead. Is that so? I murmured. Life is full of uncertainties. If he's dead, at least the promissory notes have finally arrived. The imperial consort heard about the letter and summoned me to ask for an explanation. She was overcome with laughter, laughing until tears streamed down her face. A reward. Give me a reward. This is the funniest thing I've heard in years. Several more years passed, and I reached the age when I was supposed to leave the palace. The imperial consort summoned me to her side. After much deliberation, I confessed that I did not wish to leave the palace. I had long since lost my parents and relatives. What good would leaving the palace do? The outside world was not an easy place for a woman to navigate. Besidesto, be honest, I couldn't bear to part with my matron or Her Imperial Highness the imperial consort. If you don't want to leave, then don't. It's not as if we can't afford to keep you. The imperial consort appeared concerned, but a flicker of joy crossed her eyes. One I didn't miss. You've reached the highest rank a palace maid can attain. As for advancing further, you're not exactly a beauty. You can't very well become a consort. Lately, Her Imperial Highness had begun to worry about my future. Your Highness, you've forgotten there are still female officials in the palace. Yushu is every bit as capable as those female officials. The matron reminded her with a smile from the side. The imperial consort raised an eyebrow and went to seek His Majesty's favor that very day. She had me transferred to the imperial kitchen. I became the head of the kitchen, a 6th-rank official. A few days later, the imperial consort Ned again, the matron asked. What's wrong? These women in the palace love nothing more than scheming over meals. If Yuju says the wrong thing, she'll be dragged into it. Can I really shield her every single time? What if I were to die one day? Your Highness. Never mind. I think Shusho Palace is best. Her temperament suits the role of an instructor. It's settled. So the very next day, I went to Chusho Palace. Being a tutor was actually a half rank higher than my position in the imperial kitchen. Everyone addressed me respectfully as Auntie Y. Uzu. I settled in quite well here. Teaching the newly appointed court ladies and maids the rules of etiquette was truly a light and easy position for my twilight years. The story ends here. Thank you all for reading. See you in the next installment.